Yay! Tuesday, May 26th. This is sixth period as we get into the first of our talks and information and fun stuff like that. Part of the reason why I record all the classes, as I mentioned, is the stories will go different directions. The main part of the stories will be the same, but there's little bits that just change from class period to class period, just depending on who's in the room, and especially on Thursday. Thursday's the big talk, if you want to call it the big talk. But that's the one where I sort of tailor it for each individual class. I didn't always used to do talks at the end of the year. In my first many years of teaching, I did what almost every other teacher does, which is the showing of movies. And there's a reason why teachers show movies at the end of the year. It's got two parts to it. One, we show movies because as we get towards the end of the year, you guys become a whole new level of insane. And in order to prevent us from stabbing you just right in the forehead and making you into a unicorn, we try to keep you calm. And apparently moving, flickering pictures seem to do that pretty well. So oftentimes they'll do that. And then the other reason, one of the big reasons why teachers do it, is because we have tons of paperwork that we have to do at the end of the school year that is overwhelming and a pain in the patuscus. And in order to get through that paperwork, we oftentimes show you movies so that we can get through that paperwork. And that's what I used to do. Until one day, something weird happened after school, a couple years into teaching. After I've been teaching for a few years, I was sitting in my room after school, and I had an 8th grader come by and knock on my door. And I just said, yeah, what's up? And they asked if they could come in. I said, that's fine. And they just came in and started talking to me, which was really weird, because that's not something I did growing up. I didn't talk to teachers. I didn't have a teacher that I would go and talk to between class periods, or a teacher that I would go back and talk to after school, or really even teachers I liked. I had teachers that I didn't hate as much as other teachers, and that was about as much as my level of likeness went. So the idea of a kid spending their free time to come back and talk to me, and it wasn't about anything important. They just wanted to come back and talk about life and talk about what was going on and things that were going on with their parents and stuff like that. And it was fun. It was nice. I was polite. And the whole time I was just in shock. I remember the next day talking to my students and being like, the weirdest thing happened yesterday. Like, what happened? Like, a kid came back to talk to me after school. And they went, why? I went, I don't know. It was weird. But then it would happen more and more often. I would have 8th graders who just sort of would stop in and talk to me. And after I told that year's kids, they would come back as 8th graders. And it became like one of those things where 8th graders would just come and talk to me. And then a year or two went by. And then the next weird thing happened. And it was a high schooler would come by just to talk to me. I was sitting after school, knock on my door, I open it up, and it was a kid I hadn't had in class for 2 or 3 years. They're like, hey, I was driving by, I saw your car. Everyone knew what car I drove. I drove a big purple Pontiac at the time. They could see it from the drive. They could see it from space. And they were like, hey, I saw your car. Can I come in? I'm like, sure. Why? I'm like, oh, I just wanted to hang out and talk. And I'm like, with who? They're like, you. I'm like, why? And so I would hung out and I talked with a high schooler, and once again it was fun. I mean, it was just bonding and talking, that emotion thing I keep hearing people talk about. And then once again I brought it up to my 7th graders. I'm like, do you realize how weird that is? Like, they don't go to school here. Like, I got used to the 8th grade thing because you're in the same building and you're bored, but this was a kid who specifically came back to talk to me. And so it was from there, these kids coming back to talk to me, that I started to examine what I do in class and figuring out what I did that would make kids want to spend their free time to come back and talk to me. And that examination of myself and the conversation I had is what leads to Thursday. And that's a lot of what I reveal on that day. But a lot of times, kids came back to talk to me when they were struggling with something, through some kind of hardship of one kind or another. They would come back to me when they had gotten in trouble with drugs or drinking or their family, or with, you're going to put all on my desk here on the calendar, or even that too. Or if they had gotten arrested, I've had kids come back and talk to me there, or if they've messed up their friendships and their friends won't talk to them anymore, or if they've gotten in trouble with their parents and they're afraid they can't go to their parents with something, they would come and talk to me. And oftentimes when they came back to talk to me, I would share my own experiences of things that happened to me. Because the whole idea being, at least from my viewpoint of life, is screwing up's okay. You're going to make mistakes. That's part of life, especially as a teenager. You're going to make mistakes. That's what makes you a better person, is being able to make a mistake and grow from it. What's scary is never making a mistake, because then you never get a chance to become a better person. What the issue becomes when you make the same mistake over and over again. That's when you have issues. And that would be what I would tell the kids. And so I would tell them stories about my own childhood and about mistakes I made. And so I would tell them about the fact that I've been arrested in my lifetime more than once. And they're like, but you seem so happy and normal. And I'm like, yeah, years of journey to get to that happy, normal spot. I went through the years of being messed up. What you see in front of you now is not what I was when I was in junior high. My family life was not necessarily the best family life. I come from a family that was rampant with drugs and alcohol. Alcoholic grandparents who passed out at 4 o'clock and got drinks thrown on them whenever we went out to eat. The fact that I couldn't be seen in public with my grandpa anytime in the evening because he was so drunk all the time. My uncle who got arrested for cocaine when I was in junior high and spent time in jail. I'm one of the only members of my family who has not actually been in jail. I've been arrested, and you'll find out there's a difference between being arrested and being in jail. But I'm one of the only members of my family who's not been in jail. That's what I grew up with. And so those were the stories I would end up telling my students when they came back. And it was through their advice they told me that I should tell those stories to my 7th graders. And I was like, why? They're like, well, because it helped me. And I'm like, but how is it going to help them? And so from talking to them, I realized, here's how I use the stories to help you. 2 parts. 1, I understand that from your point of view, teachers and adults in general try to present ourselves as perfect beings. The fact that we live a life where we don't make mistakes and that everything we do is perfect. And that's not true at all. You have to realize teachers are human. And as humans, we make mistakes. And I apologize if you get the impression at all if any teacher thinks that they're not fallible, that there's not mistakes to be made. And so I want to tell you these stories that you realize that you can make mistakes, horrible mistakes, the mistakes that make you think that you're going to end your life, and you can recover from them. Because I've made those mistakes. I've made those, this is it, I can't recover from mistakes, and I recovered from them. And I continued forward to make more mistakes like that. The other part I wanted to get to was that I realized you guys are at a very special spot in life right now because your parents still see you as a little kid because you're 1 year out of being in the intermediate school, 2 years out of being in the elementary school. And because of that, they still want to see you as a little kid. And you're not. You guys are very close to being adults. And because of that, you need to be treated as adults. So my stories are to help guide you along those lines. To quote from The Outsiders, this is your last time being golden. Things are going to change. Whether you like it or not, things are going to change going forward from here. This is the last year for many of you where you're not going to be familiar with drugs and alcohol. And I don't mean personally you. I mean, for most of you, if I were to ask, do you know someone firsthand that you would swear that you have seen drink or do drugs? For most of you, on some level, it's no. You know that there's probably that scary kid that you're pretty sure does it. But that's pretty much just rumor, and you're pretty sure just because he scares you, there's a good chance he does it. But that's not the same thing. By the time you leave 8th grade, you will know someone. And I'm not talking about that scary kid. I mean, you will know someone who smokes, who does marijuana, who drinks, who does something. You will leave this school knowing that because it's out there. It's coming in front of you. The summer between 7th and 8th grade is a big year for many of you. This is going to be that time where you are going to be presented with these big kid choices right in front of you. By the time you get halfway through your freshman year, so the time you get to 9th grade and you're in high school, by the time you get to Christmas, it'll be a kid you know personally. It'll be someone that you've spent time with. It'll not just be a random kid that you know, not just that kid from class that you know, not that kid from a party. It'll be a kid you know that is drinking or is smoking pot, and you'll be familiar with it. By the time you finish high school, by the time you get to be a senior, and I get to come to your open house, and you invite me to it, and I get to embarrass you with these pictures, and we sit down and talk over punch and cookies, it'll be a friend of yours. Because it happens every time I sit down and talk with a kid. It'll be someone that you hung out with in junior high. It might not be your best friend, but it's going to be a kid that you hung out with your 2 years in junior high that you did not see it coming with, that it happened to, by the time you reached your senior year. So what I realized, talking to my students when they were here in my classroom, they came back to see me, this is my last chance to have an impact on you. I've spent this whole year building up to this week to give meaning and weight to the information I pass along to you. Because I've spent this year trying to make you better people. Everything I do, from making you stand when you don't do homework, to my slow kids section, to giving you a hard time, to whacking you in the head when you don't write your name on things, all serves one purpose: to help make you a better person when you get to high school. Because if not, you're going to become one of my kids who drops out when they become in high school. And I didn't think I'd have to worry about that in my advanced classes. I used to think I could give a different speech in my advanced class, but I don't, because I've had advanced kids who dropped out. This will be my first year that I'm going to an open house for an advanced student who's going to introduce me to her son, and she's going to be a senior this year. And she had a baby when she was a senior in high school, and she was in my third period advanced class when I had her here. So it happens to any kid. I've had advanced kids who have dropped out of high school, who had A's for me when they were here, and then something happens in high school, and they end up dropping out of school. So because of that, I want to have influence over you. I want to be able to have my last chance to try and make you become the people I want you to be. So I'm going to tell you the stories that helped shape me into who I am, in my way of trying to guide you and help you become better people. And really it's going to build up to Thursday, because Thursday is a whole different talk. But that's the one when kids tell you about my stories and they talk to you about the fact that the bonding happens. It's the Thursday story, because it's a whole new way of looking at things. For now, we're going to go in a happier direction. I know that was a little somber and a little serious for you, so we're going to bring it back a little bit, and we're going to spend some time laughing at me, because if you can't laugh at yourself, who can you laugh at? Because I want to tell you about my screw-ups, and I can look back and laugh at them now. At the time, there was no laughing. There was nothing but tears. But I'm removed enough from it now that I can look back at my old self and laugh. So let's start with the very first time I got arrested. One, I hope that's not the story that you ever get to start with. One, it implies you've been arrested, which I hope most of you get to go through life without doing. And two, when you say the first time, it implies other times. So I'm hoping, once again, not things that have happened to you. I started my criminal record early on when I was 7 years old. And I was not a horrible child. I was, on this first one, I was misled, if you will, kind of gullible. I was a first grader, and I was hanging out with a fourth grader. Who was older than me, because, you know, older kids are cool, and he was 3 years older than me, so that counts as an older kid. And he wasn't a bad kid either, but he was a goober, and we would bike ride between our two houses, back and forth. And we passed an empty house one day when we were going back and forth. There was a house between our two that was empty. It was either being sold, or they were doing construction work on it, or something like that. But we'd drive by, we'd look in the windows and see the fact that there was no furniture in there. And so we got curious, so we'd go up and look in the windows, and we'd try the front door, and we tried the windows, all the things that normal burglars do, because we thought it'd be a really cool playhouse. We're like, let's just get inside and run around and play, because that'd be fun. And the fourth graders said it'd be a good idea, and fourth graders wouldn't lie to you, so we decided to go ahead and roll with it. And we couldn't find a way in. We got over the fence in the backyard, couldn't get in the sliding glass door. We were ready to give up. And as we were walking away, we saw a window we hadn't tried yet. That was, instead of in the normal window position, was on the ground, like right next to the ground, and was called an egress window. They use it for if you have a crawl space or if you have a basement, in case the house catches on fire, you're not trapped, you can still escape. This house didn't have a basement, but it had a crawl space. And a crawl space is when your house, if it's a slab, it's built flat on the ground. A crawl space means it's built elevated a little bit so people can crawl underneath your house, like fix piping and stuff like that. It's a space to crawl, hence crawl space. It's not real creative. And so this was a little crawl space. It had a little window that was smaller than the top of your desk. It was about as wide as your desk, but not as tall. It was about that tall, and it had the little silver metal, like half-circle thing separating it. And we could slide that window open, and we were like, ha-ha, we can get into the house. Except it wasn't the house. It was the crawl space, which was dark and scary, and there were spiders, and I was pretty sure like snakes and scorpions and probably like a Bigfoot or something. But there was things that were down there that really scared us, and so naturally we did what anyone would do. We nominated my younger brother. We were like, hey, you're younger than us. You should go in there. And he said, no. That's not good. I'm sure tears were involved also, and probably lots of screaming and threatening to run away, but there was no way he was going to go in there. The fourth grader couldn't fit because he was too big, because it was this little tiny area, not made for real people to get in. And so they both looked at me, and I did not want to go in there either. But genetically, I was half twig and half stick. There was no body weight to me. And so they're like, you could probably fit in there. And I'm like, I was like, all right. But although I was half twig and half stick, I was also 100% wussy. And I did not want to go into the scary place with the Bigfoot and the monsters. But they bullied and made fun of me, and like any good person, I bowed to peer pressure. And so I was like, in we go. And so I went over the little top of it, like I twigged my way in, twiggy, and I went a little window, and I crawled my way into it, and I got into the actual part of the crawl space, and it was as dark and scary as I thought. And as I moved, I could feel like little spider webs going like that across my face, and I was pretty sure that there were ants on me, and I hate ants, but that's a story for another day. And as I was crawling, I couldn't see anything. There was a ring of light, because it was all dark, except the very edges of the house, like the house connected to the ground, there was a ring of light I could see, but it was very faint light. Like, what do you see? And I'm like, darkness and scary stuff. They're like, can you find anywhere to go? Well, above me, as I'm crawling along, was just the ceiling, which was the floor of the house. And so I'm like, there's no way to get into it. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a beam of light just shows up in front of me, in the middle of the house, just beaming down into the ground. It's like, and I'm like, I see light. Like, go to it. I'm like, I am. I'm like crawling. I'm like, I'm not scared. I'm a man. I'm a man, 7-year-old man. And so I just remember crawling, and I got all the way to where the light was. And I look up, and there was a hole in the ceiling, the floor of the house, ceiling for me. And I remember standing up into this hole, and it came up to like right around here on me, because I was short at the time. And so next to me was the water heater of the house, and over here was the furnace, and it was the utility room. And apparently the house was not being built well, because there was an opening that went from the utility room like into the crawl space. So like raccoons and small children could get up in there. And so, don't you hate when your house gets infested with small children? And so I remember crawling my way up into, like stepping up, and then like the water heater was hot. Like, ow! Like turn it, and I had to turn sideways to get between the two of them, and like burn my belly. Belly. And I got through it. And then the door was not a normal door where you like have the door handle was like all flat. It was a Venetian door, which is where it has slats in it to let light through. And that was how I'd seen it. Apparently the sun came out behind a cloud, went through a window, went through there, and like beamed straight down. It was just like, God was like beckoning me into the house. And so that's what I did. I remember I pushed the little door, and the door, you push in the middle of it, and the doors like slap shut like that. So I pushed on it, and they slapped shut to the side, and I stepped into the house, and then I was inside the house. The front door was over here to my left. There was a family room or something over here. There was a wall right in front of me, and then followed was a wall like 4 feet, and there was the kitchen. And there was the kitchen area over here. I'm returning to the kitchen, and I could see the sliding glass door, and my younger brother and the fourth grader like pushed up against the window like, ah, and we're like, yay! And I ran over there and like snapped, threw it open. They came in like high five, high five. We got all excited and did what any kids would do. We ran around and played tag. And we just ran around and played tag all over the house, and it was just awesome. Like we jumped off the stairs and other stuff like that. I mean, we weren't hooligans. It's not like we were like spray painting the place or anything like that. We just ran around with like muddy shoes and had a good time. And we did that until we were ready to go home, and then I shut the little thing again. We locked like the back door, and then shut the door behind us and went out that way. Came back the next day. And played again. This time we brought sack lunches with us. We planned ahead. And brought a flashlight for when I did little crawly things. We were able to get in there. And we brought like toys with us because that's what you do. Like a little backpack full of toys. We played like little toys and stuff like that and set things up. And we remembered not to go in the front door because if you come in the front door, there's going to be witnesses. And even at 7 years old, I know if there's witnesses, you have to kill them. And so that we would always come in the back door and stuff like that. Every day I had to crawl along the little crawl space and pop up. We played. And we did this for like 3 or 4 days. I remember on the last day we were in there, day 3 or day 4, and we've been there for at least 3 of them. We were sitting in the kitchen, and the way the house was set up, you walked in the front door, and there were stairs immediately right here, and those went up, and below those was the utility closet where I popped in. Or you could go past the stairs, and there's like a front room right here, and then there was a dining room, and the dining room goes into the kitchen, and the kitchen comes back down to the front door. So we could chase each other like in a big circle, and the whole house was connected. And there was like a room over here, and then like a garage, and like that, and the upstairs. And so we were in the kitchen right there, and we were just sitting there talking, and whatever goobery things we were doing, when at the front door, we heard the telltale of like someone at the front door. And it wasn't someone knocking on the front door. It was keys in the front door. And we could see the little shaded window that there was like a shadow right there. And all 3 of us had that sudden, oh crap moment where we know, and we're sitting there, and we could have gone out the back door because it's right there, but they're coming in, and our first thought wasn't run out the back door, it was run and hide, because as children, that's your thought. As a professional criminal, it would have been like run out the back door and keep going, but that's not what happened. So we ran deeper into the house to go hide, and so I remember we ran from the kitchen this direction into this little dining room, and we're up against this wall. So the front door was over here, and then over here is the kitchen, and we could hear this guy come walking in. He was carrying something heavy, because I remember like the heavy foot, when he set something down, like, ah, and I could hear him like mumbling to himself, like in my head, all I'm hearing is like, fee, fi, fo, fum, I'm going to beat you. Because being 7, I was pretty sure that if we got caught in the house, he's legally allowed to kill us. And so I'm pretty sure at any moment he's going to find us and kill us and probably eat us, because that's what you do to small children, at least in fairy tales, which was pretty much the extent of my reading at this time. And so all 3 of us are sitting there against this wall, and my brother's on this side, and the 4th grader's on this side, and I wish I could remember that kid's name, but I still can't after all these years. And I remember looking at my brother, and he's giving me like these scared, I don't want to die eyes. And I remember looking over the 4th grader, he's giving me the, you're going to die first eyes. And we're like, and then he's close, the man is close enough behind us to about where Brittle is. So there's like a wall right behind me here, and we can hear him right there. And we know at any moment he's going to step around, because we can hear him grumbling and talking about something, probably about the fact that there's gremlins running around his house all over the place that keep leaving messes. And I'm sure we had like little dinosaurs set out or something like that. He was like, ah. So we're standing there, and all 3 of us come up with the same idea at the same time, which is to scream. And we just all go, ah! And just scream at the top of our lungs. All 3 of us. Now, as an adult, if I were walking into an empty house that I did not think anyone was there, and I'm standing in the kitchen, and then no more than 4 feet from me, 3 small goblins start screaming at the top of their lungs, I would have politely laid down and just peed myself. That's probably not what happened to this guy. But we all 3 took off running for the front door. We couldn't go to the back door because that's where he was, and he'd shut the front door. So we run to the front door, and we get there. And I know in horror movies, when you see people running from the monster, and they try to open the door, and they can't get the door open, you're like, what kind of moron can't figure out how the door works? I will tell you right now, when you're pretty sure that something behind you is getting ready to eat you, doors are the most complicated thing in the world. Just put it on my desk. Because I was 7 years old. I've been opening doors for like 4 years, over half my life. I've been doing this whole door thing. I was an expert doorist. And I remember just like it was turning and like nothing was happening, and my brother was pounding on the door, and the 4th grader was like behind me like screaming at me, and I'm like, the door is not the door, not the door, not the door, and then all of a sudden like it opened, like haha, and I remember opening it, and it hit my feet and slammed shut again. It's like aha, and like that one was like I don't know what just happened, like the door was open, and then it was just like all this in a split second, and then my brain went open door, step to side, then. Gotcha. And we were like opening it up and then throwing it wide, and this could be the place in like all like 2 seconds. And then all 3 of us took off running out the front door, screaming the entire time. Never stopped screaming. We really committed to that. And then being the genius criminals that we are, we all immediately run home. 4th grader goes out the front door and goes to the right towards his house. My brother and I go out the left into our house. Me, being older and smarter, I take the shorter path and just run across the grass. My brother, being younger, tried to follow directions, and he was supposed to stay on sidewalks. So he ran down the driveway to the sidewalk, and then started running. So he's slightly behind me and to my right. And I remember thinking at the time this was the fastest I had ever run. I can still remember picturing it's like grass, 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 tree, grass, grass, bush, grass, 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 tree, bush. It was like, oh, I'm just going, that monster's never going to get me. And then looking back behind me and seeing like this guy come running out the front door. Because apparently he was not polite enough to just lay down and pee himself. He actually chose to chase us. And then all of a sudden, like him coming, running of all 3 people, chose me. And like running behind me and just like, he's never going to get, he's getting closer. How is that possible? And like all of a sudden, a hand coming down on my shoulder, looking back on it again. I'm pretty sure I didn't get more than 9 or 10 feet from the front door, but it felt like I was really running. I'm sure he came out and was like, step, step, grab. By the time I'm like, that's possible, you just teleported. And so I remember the hand coming down on my shoulder, the whole body coming back, and my brother who kept running, and him and I making eye contact. I'm looking at him, and then he looks at me, and I give him that, like, keep running. He's like, I'm not stopping. He's gonna keep going. And like that last one was like, tell Mom and Dad I love them. He's like, we're gonna forget about you real soon. And then he just kept on going. And the guy turned me around, still in his yard, and in my head, he's preparing to kill me and probably eat me shortly after. So that's my mindset at this point. He yells at me, who are you? To which I reply, ah! Right in his face. He follows it up with, why are you in my house? To which I follow up with, and just crying at him. To which he just gives up the conversation completely and just drags me back into his house. Look at this from an outsider's perspective. Man enters house. 3 small children run from house screaming. He grabs one small child, drags it back in screaming, shuts door. Normal. Apparently that did not bother the neighbors at all. Neighborhoods. I remember him taking me inside and setting me down on the stairs. And I was like, are you going to eat me? And he was like, what is wrong with you, you creepy child? And I remember, I don't remember the full conversation, except I remember holding on, there was the stairs, and I had a little banister with the slats. I remember, wrapping my arms around that and, just crying the entire time. And him just, giving up, having a conversation, and going over and calling the police. And I remember him being behind me and calling the police, and me just waiting until the police finally showed up. And I remember, banging on the front door, ringing the doorbell, and I remember the door opening and the 2 cops being there. And then the man going and talking to the 2 policemen. And when he's talking to the 2 policemen, you reported there was a intruder in your house. Said, yeah, I called him. Where is he? And I remember him pointing to me, and the 2 cops leaning around and seeing me, and then going back, looking at each other, and going, behind the small child? And they're like, no, the small child. I'm like, oh, this guy. And so the cops arrested me. However you arrest a 7-year-old. They didn't put handcuffs on me because twigs. It wasn't going to do them any good. But they did put me in the police car. And I had very split feelings on that. Because 1, I was 7 years old, and that was really exciting to be in a police car. 2, I was being taken to my house in a police car for something I did wrong, and that was really scary. So it was exciting and scary at the same time. And I got to sit in the back of it, and they drove me back to my house. And I remember going up to the doorbell, or the door, and then my mom coming. I don't remember everything that happened. And I remember yelling or crying on her part or my part, somewhere in the middle. And then I remember them having to go get my brother, who did what you do when a monster chases you and hid under his bed. And so they had to drag him from underneath the bed and brought him downstairs. And then, being a good criminal, I immediately ratted out the 4th grader. His name is this. He lives right down there. You should go get him right now. And they went down and got the 4th grader, and they brought him over to our house. And I remember sitting in our family room with my parents and my brother and the 4th grader and the 4th grader's parents and the 2 policemen who sat there you understand when she was breaking the law? I'm like, we understand that. And it was horrible. You understand that we could arrest you and take you to jail if we wanted to. I'm like, I understand it. You could probably eat us too. And they're like, not the last part. They could not take you to jail. I'm 7 years old. I'm not going to jail. But they definitely scared me. And they're like, this is going to stay on your record forever. From now until the day you die, this will be on your record. It wasn't, but still, it scared me again. It made an impression on me. It was one of those, I remember that moment of, this is the end of my life. I am 7 years old, and I am being arrested and taken home by the police, and it was every bit as scary as you can imagine. And it made an impact on me. I did not get arrested again for 7 years. And so that was... hey, that was half my life. I was I've gone 7 years without getting arrested. I can do another 7. And I did. And I made it all the way until I was 14 before getting arrested again. So now we're going to fast forward. We're going to fast forward a wee bit until junior high. And in junior high, the second half of 8th grade, I started making a poor choice. And there's no way to gussy it up and make it any prettier than it was. The first arrest was just me being misled by a 4th grader. This one was just all me being an idiot. I started shoplifting. And shoplifting is where you steal stuff from stores. And it was just me, and I saw my friends do it, and I thought it would be something that I'd be good at, and unfortunately, I was really good at it, so I did it a whole lot. Now, just to bring down your idea of me as some great criminal, I was not going out and like stealing like guns and radios. I was stealing comic books and candy. Still a dork, just criminal dork. And so I stole a whole bunch of candy and comic books, and I started doing that towards the end of my 8th grade year. And I did that all summer between 8th grade and high school, and I did it the beginning of high school. I'd get to the point where I would go and steal just duffel bags full of candy, more than I could possibly eat, and I would give it away at school. I would just come to school and I would just give candy to other kids because it made me popular and I liked that. So I would, one of the many reasons that, and I liked eating the candy myself at times. But no good reason for it. It was just me being a hooligan kid making poor choices. And fast forward to October of my freshman year. In October of my freshman year, I was on the wrestling team. And we had a wrestling meet. And for that wrestling meet, it was after school, and we were like, you guys, like, bus left at 5 o'clock. We could go whatever we wanted to do and just be back at school by 4:30, whatever, for the bus. And I went to school in Noblesville, which is just north of here. And I remember we had a McDonald's, was right behind our high school, and then we also had a CVS right behind the high school also. And we could walk to them. It was like just right across the parking lot. And so we would go there after school and hang out there and go to both the drugstore and the McDonald's. And during wrestling season, I was trying to make weight, so I wasn't eating anything at McDonald's, and I wasn't eating any candy at that time because of the whole making weight thing. But I was still hanging out with my little hooligan friends on the wrestling team. So we did McDonald's and then went over to the CVS. And at CVS, even though I wasn't getting candy, I had another idea. Earlier in the day, I had seen a boy macking on this girl. And he was using breath spray while he was macking on her. And breath spray is the... No one saw that.
It was on video.
I know, it's way too high and way too short. Breath spray is this stuff where you just like, and you spray it into your mouth, and you talk to the ladies like, oh, your breath smells good, let's go out. You're like, nailed it. In my mind, that's how things were going to go. And so I decided I was going to get some breath spray, but this is expensive. It was like $3 for like one of these little canisters. I'm like, that's way too expensive, unless it's free. And so I decided I was going to steal some. So I remember going into the CVS and didn't know where the breath spray was. I remember walking up and down the aisle until I found it. And it came in a package just like this, where it was like the flat back, then it had like the little bubble package on the front of it. And I remember I was walking along with this in my hand, and I was like trying to find the right aisle, because you don't want to steal in front of people, witnesses, you have to kill them. And I remember going all the way down to the last aisle, which was the medicine aisle. And I'm like, no one's going to come down the medicine aisle in a drugstore, that's ridiculous. And I remember going down to the last aisle, and no one was behind me, no one was in front of me, so as I walked along, I just took the package and just ripped it open, took out the breath spray, put it in my pocket, crumpled up the outside of it, and just shoved it like between two of the shelves. And then just kept walking to the end of it, and then walked around and talked to some of my friends, because I had friends that were in the process of shoplifting also, because hooligan kids in high school. And then I was going to go ahead and leave. This particular drugstore had the double set of doors, where you'd go through one set of doors, there's like a little hallway, and then a second set of doors. Some CVS's and Walgreens have those. I remember as I went past the little checkout, I had a friend who was in the checkout buying something. And I was like, hey man, I'll see you later. I went to the first door, it's like, and they weren't automatic doors. They were like the ones you had to, actually have door handles. You had to grab one of those, and I remember stepping through that first door, and I grabbed onto the second door, and it swung inward. I remember I grabbed that one, and it was swinging towards me. And as I was starting to step outside, a hand came down on my shoulder out of nowhere. And I heard a voice behind me say, where do you think you're going? In this deep, booming voice. And I just had that, once again, oh crap moment. Because I knew I was shoplifting, but I'd never been caught. I was pretty good at it. Actually, I was really good at it. And so I was like, the fact of me getting caught now, I was like, I knew whatever was going on, it was because of that. No idea who was behind me. But I can still remember to this day holding on to that door and looking through this glass door into this daylight and thinking, that's freedom. Right there, going forward is freedom. As soon as I turn around, whatever's behind me is not freedom. And I do not want to turn around. And so followed up by the next thought of, I'm a wrestler. Whoever this person is behind me. So you see where this is going to, right? Whoever this person is behind me, there's no way they can catch me, because being a wrestler, I'm pretty much half ninja. So I could easily knock them off my shoulder, spin out the door, and run before they have a chance of getting to me. And then the other half of my brain goes, you also realize that the store behind you is full of a whole bunch of wrestlers who will give up your name because they'll find it hilarious to rat you out. Where would you rather be arrested? Right here, or in the classroom when they give up your name, and then all of a sudden the police show up and they kick open the door and they come in and pull you down to the room in front of everyone else. And that was what was going through my head. And I remember I did one of the toughest things I've ever done up to that point in my life, which was let go of the door. And I remember just watching that door move away from me, just going, this is just going to suck. And just that heartbreaking feeling of knowing as soon as I turn around, this is going to be awful. And turning around and seeing a guy in a full white jacket, the pharmacist, the guy who hands out the drugs. And he was like, were you planning on paying for that? Being witty, I responded with, paying for what? Nailed it. And he goes, the thing you just stuck in your pocket. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, son, we have cameras. Do I need to drag you back and make you watch yourself do it? And we were just going, oh, that sucks. And just going like, okay. And then reaching into my pocket and pulling out the Banaka and grabbing it. And for a split second, I thought that was it. Like, that's it. I get to go back out the door. Be like, I'm done stealing. I've learned my lesson. It's all good. I'm never going to steal again. I'm going to become a better person. And then he started leading me through the store. And I'm like, nope, that's not going to happen. Tomorrow, we'll find out what happens as he leads me through the store.